Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning we're going to talk about how much you should be putting away into savings on a regular basis. This is part one of a two-part series, so let's jump right into it. In Mastering the Defense of Wealth Preservation, we talked about the why it's important for you to be putting away money on a regular basis for the purpose of savings. We also talked about where should you be putting that savings once you have made the decision to put away a certain amount per month. And today I just really wanted to jump into how much should you be putting away? How much should you be allocating to those savings accounts on a regular basis? When trying to figure out how much you should be saving, oftentimes I recommend that people look at their exposure, the amount of exposure that they have in the event of a layoff, in the event of a job loss of some kind, or some medical emergency, and seeing how much of an impact having a period of time where there's no income coming in would actually have on their personal finances. So oftentimes with this, you may have someone who is single and has lower exposure than someone who has a family because of the costs of that household and maintaining those lifestyles. So with that, you'll have to look at your personal finances and see how much exposure you have, how much risk you have in the event of going for a period of time without income. In the most recent report by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, they basically told us that Americans have a savings rate at about 13.7%. This is abnormal with the volatility of the last year, but what that tells us is that people are saving more than they typically do. I assume that this will level back out and we will continue to see a leveling off of savings as we move on, barring any other major events occurring, of course. But with that, people are not really saving a great deal of their incomes. They are not necessarily putting away money for a rainy day fund on a regular basis. So with that, they may be saving more in this time because it's a little bit more volatile. But when you are looking at the trajectory, when you are looking at the historical reference of people's savings rates, they're not very impressive. And oftentimes, unfortunately, people don't have much in savings to be able to cover any kind of unexpected event like a health event or some kind of job layoff or job loss of some kind. So the typical savings rate that I see recommended on a regular basis is between 10 to 15%. With that, though, that may be enough. It may not be enough based on your income level, based on your costs in regards to your living expenses. But at least it gives you a starting point of per se. So how I would recommend that you look at this is look at your plan to spend, look at your budget, see how much leeway you have in your budget as it sits right now. So what's the difference between what is coming in as your income and what is going back out as your expenses? Now, there are other movements that push for higher levels of savings rates, one of which is FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, and many of those participants save 60 to 70% of their incomes, but they've also structured their plan to spend in order to accomplish that. But really what you need to figure out is what is your level of exposure first and foremost, and then moving on from your level of exposure and knowing how much that is, looking at, okay, well, how much should I be saving? And how do I need to adjust my budget accordingly? Now, I believe step one for most people is to set aside about $500 for a emergency fund. Now, that's only a starting point, and as you build up that savings, it'll turn into a rainy day fund of sorts, which will cover your baseline expenses in the event of a job loss or a health issue or something like that. But this is a good starting point, And usually it's a lot easier for people to obtain $500 through selling something or building it into their budget over a certain number of months. But it's important for you to have that savings at least from a starting point in order to get that momentum rolling. So this rainy day fund should be set aside so that it is out of reach and out of sight, out of mind for the purpose of protecting it from your everyday operating account. So whatever account you use your debit card for or pull cash out of on a regular basis, you'll want that savings account, you'll want that rainy day fund to be separated from that account so that you're not tempted to use that for something that may not be categorized as an emergency. Now, with that, it's important to also try to find some account that is at least protecting you to some degree against inflation. Now, inflation as of this year, according to Kiplinger, is set at about 2.2%. Now, with that, that basically means that if you had $100 and at the beginning of this year in January, by the end of this year, that money would only go as far as to cover 98% of what it did at the beginning of the year. So with that, you'll want to be mindful about trying to utilize a savings account that at least keeps up with inflation. Now, that is really challenging to do this day and age. And so money market accounts, high yield savings accounts, and just typical savings accounts are really not returning a great deal. But it's important for you to look at this money not being as an instrument for growth, but as an instrument with the purpose of defending you, protecting you against risk. So with that, if you're not familiar with what inflation is, Webster defines inflation as a continuing rise in the general price level, usually associated to an increase in the volume of money and credit relative to available goods and services. So we've seen this in the last year with stimulus and with currency flowing into the economy, that there's more currency, so therefore the currency doesn't go as far. And so with that, you over time can buy less and less with that same amount of currency as you used to be able to. Now, this is a normal occurrence, and if you look at history, you look at historical reference, you can see many products that over time have gone up in cost. So step 2, I believe, comes down to saving $1,000 in that savings account in that rainy day fund. Now, this is an amount that is commonly referred to or recommended by Dave Ramsey and his group, but this is a good starting point in order to cover those $400 or $1,000 expenses that many people have to go into debt in order to cover. If this information is helpful to you, please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're reminded to come back on a daily basis and improve in your personal finances. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.